Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sebastian, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And I'm sure some of you guys are like, wait, what? They talking about football now? Before we even get into that, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, I know some of the viewers watching the show like, yo, bro, what? Since when do you start talking about the NFL? Well, first of all, let me just quickly tell you guys, I did follow the NFL for quite some time when I was living in the States. I didn't watch it to the level that I watched the NBA because I enjoyed to watch basketball more. But I watched a lot of NFL games, a lot of them, especially living in New York, supporting the New York Giants, so I've been watching football for a very long time. It's just that I don't follow it. And now that we covered the NBA, it takes up so much of my time, so I'm more preoccupied with covering what's happening in the NBA than I do the NFL. But every once in a while, I'm able to follow a pretty big story. And speaking of pretty big stories, what happened? So this morning I woke up, I was going through the news to see what was there for us to talk about, and I didn't see much to discuss, right? So I was going through the internet, and then a video was recommended to me. And in this video, it was the highlights of the New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills game. And at the time, I saw the highlights and it was like 7 hours that they had published the show. But then I saw that the show had, the video had 1.1 million views. I'm like, damn, 1.1 million views? There must be a lot to see here. So I decide to click on that video and watch the full highlights. It was probably maybe a 15-minute or 10 to 15-minute highlight video, and let me tell you guys something. I was absolutely captivated by every single minute of it. But when I was watching the beginning of it, I noticed that Aaron Rodgers, who was making his big New York Jets debut, there was a lot of hype around that. You saw him kind of making his rounds around New York, going to the Knicks, going to the Brooklyn Nets, going to all of these games, attending all these various events because, Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing for New York. He's going to be playing in the Big Apple, right? So there's going to be a lot of hoopla and excitement around that. So I knew going into this game that there was a lot of excitement. But prior to that, I had heard somewhere, I don't know where I heard it as I was watching the video, I heard that Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles tendon. So as I was watching the highlights, I was trying to figure out when it happened. But in the highlights, you don't really see it. You just see him kind of drop back in the pocket, then he gets hit, but then the play continues on. And then from that point forward, it was a substitute quarterback that took over the game. But I could just imagine if I was a Jets fan sitting in that arena, in that stadium, rooting for the New York Jets, and there's all this hype surrounding getting Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And then you get the guy, and in the first quarter, within the first, 4 snaps or something like that, he has an Achilles, he ruptures his Achilles tendon. I'm sure those guys must have been deflated, which was the very reason why I was shocked from what ensued thereafter during that highlight reel. I was watching the game, or the highlights, and the Buffalo Bills go up, right? As you would expect. The Jets' best quarterback, he's out of the game. Maybe some of the players are deflated. That's what you would expect. But then the total opposite happens. As I'm watching the game, it was like as if Josh Allen and those guys said, you know what? There's not enough drama here right now. It's a little bit dry. I know we're up. How can we think of something? How can we think of ways to make this thing interesting? You know what? I'm gonna start throwing these Hail Marys where the receiver is being covered by 2 people plus people in the stands. I'm going to try to put it in that throwing pocket, and guess what ends up happening? He gets the ball intercepted by Jordan Whitehead. That happens the first time. The game continues on. It happens the second time. At that point, you would think that, okay, you know what? We need to be a little bit careful with the ball and the way that we're throwing the ball. That's actually not what happened. So going into the first half, as I'm watching the highlights, I saw that the Bills were up. And actually, even in that third quarter, late in that third quarter, I couldn't see how the New York Jets were going to be able to come back and win that game. I just couldn't see how. But then we get to the waning moments of the fourth quarter. I believe they scored. They scored a touchdown, and I think they kicked a field goal or something like that. I don't remember exactly what happened. But they ended up tying up the game. And I'm looking at the highlights timestamp, and I'm like, well, there's only like 2 minutes left in this highlight, 1.5 minutes left in this highlight on YouTube, on the NFL YouTube page. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, well, what's going to happen now? So what happens? Game goes into overtime. Meanwhile, I'm watching all of this for the first time. The game goes into overtime. The Bills try to get a score. It didn't happen. Then the punt kicker, he kicks the ball, to the end zone to see if they can return it. I'm watching the guy, what's his name? Xavier Gipson. He catches the ball. And the minute he catches the ball, he gathers himself and he starts to try to return the football. The minute I saw him get past like the first two defenders when he faked that guy out, I don't know who it was. I was like, wait a minute. If they don't stop him now, he may go all the way. I was watching the highlight. Think about this. Xavier Gipson was running so fast. One of the blockers was actually behind him. He outruns him. Then he actually slows down, allows his teammate to catch up to him, block the other guy, and then somehow wiggles his way out of a tight squeeze, and then somehow finds a way to return the ball and score the touchdown. I was absolutely floored. I think the shock and excitement that the New York Jets fans that you saw them have it on TV was the same exact shock that I had sitting here watching that game, watching the highlights on my computer. I was absolutely floored by what I saw. So that was the first big kind of news. Let's get to the other news, which is the Aaron Rodgers injury. Let me tell you guys something. The moment that I heard about this injury, I'm not gonna lie to you, the first person that came to my mind, let me just get his age right here. Aaron Rodgers. How old is Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers is 39 years old. The minute I heard that he tore his Achilles tendon, the first person that came to my mind was Kobe. The very first person. Now, obviously, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles tendon at a much advanced age. But nevertheless, that was the first person that came to mind because Kobe tore his Achilles tendon at 34. And once you have that type of injury, especially at that point in your career, it could be debilitating and it can actually shorten your career, right? So that was the first person. And then I was reading up a little bit about it, and I actually want to read from an ESPN article here. It starts off with the headline, Aaron Rodgers torn Achilles tendon injury. What's next for the Jets? It's the hope that kills you. The same Jets fans who welcomed Aaron Rodgers to New York with a roar as he ran onto the field on Monday evening were silenced after a grand total of 4 snaps. Rodgers tore his left Achilles tendon in Monday night's victory over the Buffalo Bills, an injury that will end his season. New York coach Robert Saleh, thousands-yard stare at the prospect of Zach Wilson taking over again at quarterback said it all. 6 months of joy and excitement dissipated in a matter of moments. Rodgers seemed to realize he had suffered the tear on the field as he gloomily shook his head towards the sideline and sat down before being helped to the locker room. With the news of his injury, there are naturally a handful of questions that need to be addressed. None will be a particular easy read for Jet fans, but the fallout from this impacts the entire NFL. Let's rip off the Band-Aid and start with the most painful one. Does the Rodgers injuries take the Jets out of the championship picture in 2023? Realistically, yes. We saw a version of this team that Wilson and a great defense failed to come close to completing a playoff berth last season, when it needed 5 victories over the backup quarterbacks to make it to 7-10, barring some stunning development from Wilson as the season goes along that we didn't see Monday night, or the arrival of a totally unexpected solution. The Jets can't expect to compete with the Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, and other top teams in the AFC through a full season and into a postseason run. Remember, all the concerns some of us had about this team with Rodgers still apply with Wilson. As good as the defense was last season, it was the healthiest unit in football, and that's unlikely to occur. And then the article goes on to say a few other things, basically summarizing the impact of this injury here. Now, given the fact that we don't cover the NFL as much as we cover the NBA, I decided that on this particular topic, I wanted to lean on what some of the experts had to say in terms of this particular injury and get a sense of what some former NFL players had to say. So this morning I was watching a segment on Undisputed, and Richard Sherman and Keyshawn Johnson were actually asked to give their synopsis of what they feel this injury, the impact of it, and just to give their general thoughts on the injury. So what we want to do is want to quickly play what Keyshawn Johnson and Richard Sherman had to say about the injury, and then we're going to come back and conclude the show. Take a listen to that there.
What was your reaction to what you saw last night?
Devastated, shock for my good friend Robert Saleh, for the Jets team. It's one of the worst injuries you could have, especially in professional sports and in football, because it takes such a long time, not only to heal, but mentally. It's such a journey. It's such an up and down roller coaster of emotions every day, because you don't feel like you have any strength in that leg. You feel kind of numbness from the calf down. And you just got to keep trusting the process, keep believing, keep trusting the process. But it takes at least 6 months before you feel anything close to normal. And for him to play the quarterback position, I mean, he's 38 years old, 39 years old. It's going to be a long road for him to come back. So you just hate to see it. You hate to see all this build up, the hard knocks, everything he's done, all the hype around the team, the defense. And for him to only play 90 seconds, 4 plays, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was the moment it happened, you said, damn. And I've never had an Achilles injury, but I knew it was something serious. I didn't know if it was an ACL, a broken ankle, something that I've had before. And you could just tell once he stood up and then he laid back down on his back, you're like, oh, yeah, he can't put any weight on that situation. I went through something similar as a player in 1999. When we're coming off AFC Championship game in 98, first game of the year, we're favored, as you remember, as the top dogs going.
Yep.
It's similar to the Jet situation where we are favored by many people to go to the Super Bowl and win it. Vinny Testaverde was our quarterback. He goes down the first game, pops his Achilles against the New England Patriots, and I can only imagine what the teammates was saying, because I know what we said and how I felt as a player looking at this situation. My dreams just went out the window as a Super Bowl, because we're now turning to the backup quarterbacks in this situation. In my press conference, playmaker, you see that press conference and listen to it, because we got it right now. You would think, as I look back and reflected, I was really crazy. I was really, really crazy. But we lost our star quarterback due to the Achilles, and my reaction after the game was something special. Run that tape for me. That's how visibly upset.
Well, you look like a young man there.
I was young. But that's that visibly upset that you realize that your star quarterback and all the hard work that you put in and everything that you did in the training camp probably just came to a screeching halt. That just, it was just, I get chills thinking about it, because we were favored to win it all.
So you heard what the gentleman had to say there. And I guess that the question now becomes, where did the New York Jets go? As you heard the article say, I believe that they're in a very, very competitive conference, AFC, which is the AFC, with teams like the Bills, the Bengals, and the Chiefs. And whenever you lose your quarterback, obviously is going to have a pretty big impact on the team's ability to be able to move forward. Obviously, we're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So obviously, his presence is going to be felt, or the lack thereof, in a case like this when you lose him on the season opener. I'm very, very sure that it's going to be deflating. I'm sure those guys are running off of adrenaline. I'm sure there was an aspect of that game where some of those New York Jets players wanted to ensure that they won that first game. Because think about it. If they lose that game, after losing Aaron Rodgers after just 4 snaps where he tears his Achilles, where do you go from there psychologically? Where do you go from there? And then you heard what the article said. They were not too confident, as the head coach, as he said, the head coach looked over at Zach Wilson. They weren't too confident in their backup quarterback. But now this is the person that you have. So at least by them getting this victory, they have a blueprint, number one. Number two, given the fact that they beat a legitimate team, now we're going to get to Josh Allen and his turnover machine that he was yesterday. But nevertheless, I think they have something to hang their hats on. But for now, if I'm being realistic, I think like most people said, I don't expect this team to be an outright threat given the fact that they just lost Aaron Rodgers. But that doesn't mean that they can't be competitive. As you heard what the article said, they do have a strong defense. Obviously, we have to wait and see because injuries play a role in that. But injuries play a role all throughout sports, right? Happens in basketball, happens in football, and football happens everywhere. So what I want to know from you guys is simply this. Number one, what are your thoughts on that victory? Do you think the Jets should have won that game? Let's just be honest. Given what transpired in the first quarter, or do you think that the Buffalo Bills gave away that game, number one? Number two, how do you see the New York Jets season moving forward now that they've lost Aaron Rodgers? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and then we'll catch you guys on the next show. Peace.